Calculate the following for the given frequency distribution: the population mean and the population standard deviation. So in order to do this for a frequency distribution, we have a problem with the data. The data here is effectively qualitative because the range of values 50 to 55, that dash in between, really makes it a qualitative piece of information. So we need to represent the data in a way that is quantitative, but still meaningful. So what we use are the midpoints. And the midpoints we can come up with by taking the average of the data, the lower class limits and the upper class limits. So 50 plus 55 divided by 2 gives me an average of 52.5, and that's the midpoint of my first class. Now the midpoint of my second class, 56 plus 61 divided by 2, that is 58.5. If you'll notice, that's a difference of 6. So if I subtract those two numbers, I get 6. And similarly, if I take any two lower class limits that are consecutive or consecutive upper class limits, the difference is 6. That's what's known as the class width of the data set. And I almost wrote 9, sorry. Now, knowing that, I could get the first midpoint and just repeatedly add 6 to each one of those. So, 58.5 is what I meant to type, plus 6. That gives me 64.5. So that would be the next midpoint. And then if I add 6 to that, that would be 70.5. And then 76.5. And finally 82.5. So repeatedly adding 6 can speed this process up. Now, when we do the frequency distribution, mean and standard deviation, we're going to use weighted statistics. We will put our midpoints into L1 in the calculator and the frequencies into L2. And that's just going to be a standard here for these frequency distributions. So I'm going to go into the list editor. If I press Stat and slide over to Calc, the very first item here is 1var stats. So, I forgot to put my data in. So stat Okay, so I'll pull up the calculator and go into the list editor. So if I hit Stat and Enter, that will take me into the list editor. If you already happen to have some data in that list, go ahead and clear those out. Just highlight the name and press Clear, then Enter. And start entering your individual class midpoints into L1. And the give me a second to get through those. Okay, and the frequencies that are corresponding into L2. All right, next, to do the weighted mean of this distribution and the weighted standard deviation at the same time, press the Stat key again. But this time we're going to do some calculations. So come over to the Calc menu. The very first item is 1var stats, and that stands for single variable statistics. And it just needs to know where the data is, and those were our midpoints. So put L1 for list 1. And the frequency list leave as L2 if it's already set there. That's great. If you're not seeing these menus, then what you need to do is press 2nd and 1 to get L1. And then hit a comma, which is right above the 7, and then press 2nd and 2 to get L2 to show up on screen. It's effectively doing that for us with these menus, so you'll get the same answers in the end. But once that's typed in, press Enter, and you'll get the population mean. Even though it says sample mean, the calculation is the same, so it doesn't make any difference. So 62.83 is the mean. And then the standard deviation, because we're dealing with a population of data, we want sigma x, so 9.03. And that is the calculations. And I rounded to 2 decimal places, but of course just follow what the problem asks of you.